Okay, so the termination of the sale of ITD's Boise campus by Idaho lawmakers, that led to a quick lawsuit filed by the blocked buyers at the conclusion of the last legislative session. So there's the legal argument working its way through the courts, but there's also an argument taking place among some of the defendants. That would be the Board of Examiners, the governor, the attorney general, and the secretary of state. That's the three that make up the panel meant to handle the administration of financial matters in the state of Idaho. We've talked about how the governor and the AG disagree how the state should be defended in this lawsuit. Well, there was another meeting today to kind of figure that stuff out even further. Joe Paris was there, but Joe, I guess it sounds like nothing really changed after today's meeting, or do we know?
We don't really know at this point because, well, a big bulk of the important stuff happened in executive session. So here's what we do know. We'll need to wait for some new filings to be made in court to get the full picture here. What I can report to you, though, is that in executive session, there was a conversation about legal strategy or legal filings made on behalf of the Board of Examiners. Not sure what specifically that was for now, but we do know when we were allowed back into the meeting, there was a vote, and both Governor Little and Secretary McGrain agreed to go ahead with the strategy discussed behind closed doors. Attorney General Labrador, he voted to not do that. So I asked Little and Labrador to talk with us about the decision. Both declined today. But the crux of this whole side in the battle is the governor's office disagreeing with how the AG filed arguments in the case. The governor's office says there was never a meeting of the Board of Examiners to discuss on the record how they will approach the case and what arguments will be filed. Labrador's office has said that the governor's office knew exactly what direction they were going and that deadlines were coming up. Secretary McGrain is supposed to be a part of all of this as well, but he wasn't told that there was a lawsuit happening, and he wasn't even aware of the lawsuit until after the filing had been made. But he told me a few weeks ago he's hopeful that the Board of Examiners will be removed from the suit going forward. I can add that Governor Little's office shared a statement with me a short time ago, in part, and this is in reference to the issue between the AG and the governor, saying, quote, "With that in mind, the board took appropriate action today to clarify the very ministerial role of the board, and we look forward to the Attorney General filing documents with the court by Friday as directed by the board." So there you go. Brian, I have a good feeling of where this is likely headed just based on what the problem here is and basically what, the limited solutions. We'll find out, though. So the Attorney General will be having to file these briefs or these filings by Friday, and that could be Friday at, at 11:59 at latest. So we'll have to see what actually gets filed.
This seems like this part of this lawsuit is kind of minutia, in the weeds, but how big of a deal is this kind of infighting?
I think it's a big deal in the sense that you have two different directions. And I think, when you talk about the ministerial part of the Board of Examiners, and that can kind of be the crux of this situation, the bottom line here is that AG Labrador, he made his arguments in court. The governor's office clearly didn't like those. If they did, they wouldn't have probably made a big deal out of it. So it'll be an interesting thing to follow. On top of this, the Idaho legislature, named as Moyle, House Speaker Mike Moyle, in this lawsuit, they're also involved. So you could have a situation where you have the state of Idaho coming from two different directions. This could get messy, so we'll take a look.
And Raul Labrador, the AG, is not representing the state in this matter anymore.
Correct. There's private counsel now for ITD. They got their own counsel after there was this disagreement on what was filed and what was argued in court. So at this point, the AG's office is still representing the Board of Examiners. We'll see what gets filed in that regard coming up later this week. Okay. But the state of Idaho, under the guise of ITD, they are still represented by a private attorney.
All right. Thanks, Joe.